And that's okay if you reach that point where you have to burn it all down to the ground in order to shift. Hi, my name is Audrey, and I spent the first 25 years of my life in a compet cycle chasing the approval of men that I didn't even really like. I don't know why that introduction feels like I'm in some sort of like AA meeting, except for I don't have a drinking problem, I have a men problem. In today's video, we're gonna talk about how I turned my biggest breakup into my biggest breakthrough, how I went from seeking validation to seeking sanctuary in my own solitude, and ultimately how I healed my anxious attachments and finally was able to reclaim my power and energy back. Pretty much my whole life I have been described as boy crazy, and it's kind of valid. It's been something that I felt that was always assumed. Like, I was always asked as a young girl who my crush was or who I liked in class, things like that. I often saw validation through these relationships, even as early on as my childhood. I will say I was also very queer even as a child, and it was in like high school that I finally came to a consensus that I was bisexual, and that's how I identified at the time. It was around this time that I found myself in my first like relationship. It was one of those on again and off again typical high school relationships. It definitely deteriorated at my self-worth, which led to me jumping into relationship after relationship after relationship, trying to fill this void that I didn't know how to fill myself. So I was on again, off again with that one boyfriend up until my freshman year of college, where I met another partner who was pretty young and jumped into a very serious relationship, and it became very toxic and emotionally abusive. Luckily, I have people around me that pulled me out of that situation that I'm so grateful for, but it definitely took some therapy and working through. But at the same time, I was still caught in this loop, in this pattern, from this toxic relationship to another toxic relationship, and I was with that person for about like 6 months to a year, and shortly after that person, I met my last partner, who I was with for a total of 4 years. So I haven't had a whole lot of time to just be alone up until recently, until I started doing this work and really started to understand the pattern that I was caught in and how to finally untangle myself from this like chain of men that I had wrapped myself up in. I was a serial monogamous. I was always in a relationship, and if I wasn't actively committed to someone, I was looking to where that next person would come from to find my own worth in another person picking me. Choosing me as their person felt like some sort of letter of acceptance to be who I was supposed to be. And I don't feel like my story is unique by any means. A lot of women find themselves in the position that I have put myself in the past, which is why I want to use today's video to empower you with tangible tools, break down these beliefs, unlearn these unconscious behaviors, and stop these cycles, and be able to cultivate a relationship first with yourself before exploring the world, building up your confidence so that you can attract the right people into your life from a secure, safe place. Hopefully something in this video will spark that shift in you. This video is for all my queer girls branded boy crazy because they didn't know the difference between love and validation. Looking back on my dating history, it's so obvious how stuck I was in this cycle on trying to find worthiness in other people. It wasn't until I really began my healing journey that I started to unpack why I was like that, what made me repeat the same relationship over and over again. I just want to preface that it took me crashing out after my last relationship ended. I ended up getting cheated on. Honestly, it felt like a factory reset. Like, I knew something had to change. After ending my last relationship, my instinct really desperately wanted to go back to that immediate comfort, which would be men, but I really wanted to challenge myself to decenter men from my life. First and foremost, by just prioritizing my friendships and letting that be the thing that fills me up, pours into my confidence when I am feeling insecure or not feeling worthy. But for me personally, I knew that I needed a significant amount of space. Men have been this like center pole of gravity gravity in my life, in my decision making, how I appear, how I present, how I act, how I speak, every little nuanced detail to how I show up in this world. And in order to shift that, I had to put myself in predominantly queer women spaces. That has just been my personal preference. But if you want to decenter men from your life, you can still have men in your life. It doesn't mean that you have to completely eradicate men. Just such a silly misconception that women who want to decenter men are basically saying screw all men. I think it's actually really empowering to be able to say, right now I am going to be celibate, or right now I'm not going to be dating, or I'm not going to be romantically involved with any men. I'm going to uphold these boundaries, maintain these relationships that are completely platonic, men that respect where I'm at, and men that I can truly have a friendship with, that aren't in that limbo, one day maybe she'll let me have a chance. So like, I mean men that really just see me as a person, as a friend, as, you know, their sister, or sees me in that platonic light completely. And sure, I can have that man in my life. I don't find those men often. Those men don't come by as much as I would like them to. After my last relationship ended, it was really important for me to explore my queerness, especially as someone who had been with girls on a casual basis. I really wanted to give myself permission to be queer at this stage of my life. For me, I have just felt the most safe to show up in my healing journey and not feel like I am going to be taken advantage of. Unfortunately, oftentimes I feel that men have been leeches in my life, trying to take my identity or take things from me or take my body from me. Like, there's always these hidden agendas that often come with men, and honestly with queer people and women, I just don't find myself in those same sticky situations as often. I go out, I primarily go to queer clubs or lesbian clubs so that I don't feel that pressure or expectation upon me, especially as I'm unpacking all the gender roles that I've internalized. I'm still navigating how being femme presenting affects my relationship with not only men, but also women, queer women especially. It's still something that I'm learning about, and that's just where I'm at right now. Key aspect to my healing journey has been understanding my attachment style. And personally, I mostly identify with the anxious attachment style. Often attachment styles work off of each other, unhealed behavior that kind of ricochet. For me, there's an anxious person and then there's often an avoidant counterpart. But not only just understanding what that is, what that means, how that affects my behavior, but really taking ownership of that is my responsibility to understand, and not putting it on the person that I'm with to decode my behavior in order to show up for me in the ways that I think that they need to show up to appease my anxious attachment. And that was probably one of the biggest lessons that I learned from my last relationship. We cannot put the burden of our past and our trauma onto the person in our present moment. It took me a long time to understand that this in itself is a toxic thing for me to do, and to make peace with that. If someone is triggering my anxious attachment style, that means that I'm not feeling safe around them. That is a red flag. When I start to notice those signs that that person is displaying behaviors that trigger those wounds in me, that maybe that person isn't the best person for me to be around right now, or maybe ever. Maybe that person just isn't an energetic match for me. Another realization that I had while unpacking these trauma cycles is that there has a lot for me to do around safety, and I would keep men around because there was this illusion of that made me more safe, whether that meant physically in my environment or if that meant internally in my environment as a person. Finding safety in my own solitude has been key and essential to not falling back into those same toxic behaviors. And I find it kind of ironic, this entanglement between safety and men, because I would often leave encounters that were romantic with men that left me feeling like, why did I do that? Why was I there? Like, what was the purpose of that exchange? And sitting with that question and being present with that question has helped me discover what ways I am still attaching to people that are not aligned to me. This process has taken a lot of unlearning and self-reflection. So if you feel at any point like you're going backwards or lost your sense of progress, I promise it is a journey. It doesn't happen overnight that you are just gonna magically become a version of yourself that is confident and secure. You're going to make progress and then discover something else that feels like it unearths a new behavior that you didn't even realize was driving your relationships. It takes time to unpack these things. Thing that almost caught me by surprise when I started my healing journey was how much time and energy I got back once I began to sift and sort through all of these emotions. In retrospect, those are time-consuming things: journaling, meditating, doing whatever you need to do. Decentering men from my life made me realize how much energy it takes to try to shape shift into being somebody else for someone else, to try to be the perfect woman for every man that I encounter. It wasn't even that I was just trying to appease men. I was trying to appease everybody, and people pleasing is a wound that I am still actively working on. After my long-term relationship ended, I had to really confront the fact that I was living a cycle on a loop, and that loop was to avoid myself. This metamorphosed into something much bigger than just decentering men from my life. It was really about reclaiming my power, because it turns out when you try to bend and mold yourself into someone that you think is worth loving, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of cognitive effort to become this version of yourself that you don't even resonate with, you don't even recognize. So I really had to differentiate how others see me is not always going to be how I see myself, and detaching from men and also detaching myself from the way that other people perceive me have been critical to finding my own confidence in my way of being. Because how could I possibly go into this next chapter of life and eventually be one day open to sharing that space with someone special again if I do not feel safe in my own self? Now, if you are someone that struggles with perfectionism and people pleasing, I cannot recommend this book enough. This is The Women Who Run with Wolves. This book single-handedly changed my life. It has reignited a fire in me so deeply that I did not even realize that I had been smoldering for years and years. Showing up as the wild woman has been just an empowering concept. This book has just been a reminder to not let society turn me into a smaller version of myself. If you also struggle with being seen and showing up and feeling that pressure to conform into a more submissive role, which I mean often women are told to do, so I highly recommend you check this book out. It's a good one. As a femme-presenting person, I find it particularly hard to recognize gender roles and how that impacts me, because I still feel a lot of those feelings on a daily basis with those little micro interactions that I'll have with people at the grocery store, or maybe, you know, casual chats and they ask me like, you know, if I have a husband or something like that. It's still something I work through, because on the outside, like, someone might not look at me and be like, oh, like, she likes girls, but I do. So it's still something that I'm learning on how to confidently show up in my truth, which is extremely girly and feminine, and know that my queerness is still valid. To not try to understand every aspect of my identity, but rather let my universe be a mirror to myself and let it show me what I need to learn, rather than trying to get to an answer, trying to understand, like, am I bisexual? Am I queer? Am I a lesbian? You know, trying to force all of these different labels onto myself when I just want to be me. As a femme-presenting queer person, one lesson that I still feel like I'm learning is allowing myself to take up space. I've had men tell me that I was too much. I've had women tell me that I'm too much. I've had a lot of chatter surrounding my identity, and so one way that I stay grounded in myself is knowing that if I show up and it is my most authentic version and I feel true in that, and the person in front of me is turned off or doesn't mesh or doesn't vibe with it, then they're not my person. Showing up for myself every day is all that I can do. Transformation is not going to happen overnight. You are not going to snap your fingers and wake up this evolved version of yourself. So if you've ever found yourself in that loop, chasing approval and losing yourself, let me just tell you that healing is messy, but it is also liberating and freeing. If any of this resonated with you, I would love to hear your story in the comments down below. Especially as a young queer woman, I will take all the advice as a baby gay that I can get. Just please remember, you are worthy, you are whole, you are enough. I hope this video is a reminder that you are not alone and we are all somewhere in this journey trying to figure out this life. I'm just grateful that you decided to be here and share this space with me today. I would be so appreciative if you like, comment, subscribe, whatever. Follow me on socials, and until the next one, bye.